Welcome to Stoke Meter, and welcome to Jennifer Cline, also known as Miss DeWalt. How are you, Jennifer?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is really, truly ours, and it is so fun how this all came about. There was an individual that we interviewed by the name of Al Landry, and then one of Al Landry's mentors actually referred us to Jennifer, and Jennifer's story is one of the coolest stories that that you can ever hear, just because it's so inspiring. And we'll get into that. But Jennifer, again, this is a pleasure, and as always, we got Karchner over there with his big old grin too.
I'm excited about this one. We were talking a little bit before we started, and we have some common interests and themes, and I'm so excited to be able to talk with Jennifer as well.
Yes. Well, Jennifer, I'm just going to go right into it if that's okay. I know that you have a great big following on TikTok. You also have that on Instagram. You're known as Mr. DeWalt just because you have an affinity for DeWalt power tools, and that's not something we always get from in this kind of setting. And I know that it started out with a tragedy, and I know that that's not always an easy thing to go into, but I'm just wondering, can you delve into how you became Miss DeWalt?
Sure. And like you said, it did begin with a tragedy, and that was the death of my husband 13 years ago. He was, by all accounts, a handyman. He worked as a maintenance man at our local college, and he left for work one morning and was killed on his way to work. And so it was in those days following that I was literally picking up the pieces of my life. And then as time went on, I was picking up his tools, which were DeWalt tools. And that's why that brand, that was the beginning. Later on, I took a job. I'm a paralegal, so I was working with our grand jury in a neighboring county. And one of my very good friends asked me to make a thin blue line flag because he had seen on Facebook that I was trying projects around my home and kind of earning a handy reputation among my friends. And so I made a thin blue line flag for him. And then that led to other people seeing it. And I was working at my day job, coming home every evening and weekends and making these flags. So I actually had a side business. And through that, I won a contest with DeWalt.
Nice.
It was awesome. It was a pivotal point in my life. That contest, I know looking back now, it was created for me. There was not going to be any other winner. That was part of my life's path. And following that, though, around the courthouse, my police officer friends started jokingly calling me Miss DeWalt. And we all laughed, ha ha ha, because there is a Miss Makita. And so they're like, you're like our Miss Makita, but you're Miss DeWalt. And so, but that never let up. I thought, okay, we had our laugh. And then they kept calling me that. And then around that time, I really felt the need for female representation on YouTube. And I thought, well, I don't have all the answers, but as I figure things out, like fixing my garage door or fixing my toilet, I'll video it and I'll put it on my YouTube channel because I feel it's really important for women, especially, but I hope to inspire everybody. But I feel like women really need to see other women taking on these tasks. And so I had kind of kicked around what I should call my YouTube channel, and everything else just didn't sound right. And I'm like, no, that isn't me. That isn't me. I'm Miss DeWalt. So I kind of owned it. And that's how all of this started.
That is fantastic. And I'll tell you what, I'm not Gary down there, the dude can build anything, right? But watching some of your videos and how you just delve into it, quite frankly, it inspired me because it's one of those circumstances where I have no excuse not to get into some type of building or do it yourself, or there's always that level of intimidation that you go on, what if I mess it up, man? What if I do, what if I do any of these things? And watching you have fun with it. And it's one of those things that is not only inspiring, but it lets you know that, hey, along the way, you're going to learn along the way. It doesn't matter if you're making this mistake, because when you learn it, then you won't do it again.
Exactly.
And
Every mistake is a lesson. And I've learned not to beat myself up too badly over my mistakes, because a lot of times it ends up better when you're like, okay, now shoot, look what I did. And perfect example, my very first flag that I made.
Right.
I just went out and bought laminate flooring. Of course, I didn't look at anybody else's plans online for flags. I winged it. And I thought it looked really nice. And then I took a picture, and somehow looking at it with my eye and looking at it through the lens of a camera, I was like, oh, wait, that looks disproportionate. So my first flag, I was like, oops, this is a mistake. How am I going to fix it? So I took it into work, and I had all of my officer friends, as they came in to testify for grand jury, sign the boards, because I thought, well, if I have a bunch of signatures, then that'll cover up my mistake. And now that led to people seeing it and wanting to order. And that mistake led to such beautiful things that would maybe not have happened otherwise. So every mistake is an opportunity in disguise.
No, I love that. And along the way, though, there were other things that you were reading a lot about you as of late. Since I got to know you, I know there were a lot of different things that you faced that were, well, potential blockades to it. And not just making the mistakes and learning from those mistakes, but just overall, there were all types of things that were so-called against you and against the success. And I'm just wondering, how did you rise up above it? I know it's an oft-used quote, but how did you rise above it? What was the mindset that you had to get into in order to push it? This is, again, you're an inspiration. The reason you're an inspiration is because of all the things that you overcome. But how did you do it?
I'm going to say faith. Absolutely, without a doubt, faith. And one of the stories, the job that I loved, that I just spoke about at the courthouse, unfortunately, sometimes when you start to draw attention, it doesn't make the people in your life around you comfortable. And you start to get, and I had a female boss that was very uncomfortable, I think, with herself. Sure. And with me getting attention. And she really just, I have no other way to say it. She harassed and tormented me. And I ended up filing a complaint, which I won. But I knew once I did that, I would have to leave. I was going to be forced out because the powers that be. So, and honestly, that was 3 years ago. And to this day, it is tough. I still really struggle with that. And it's my faith. Every day I say, God, help me through another day. Help me fulfill my purpose. But that has really it's been a struggle. If anyone out there's listening and they know where they knew they were a good person and doing the right thing and had their heart in the right place, and you still got pushed out, that it means it's your time to go. You're supposed to be pushed out onto bigger and better things. And so I know that, even though it's tough, and I still am, like, not happy with the people that treated me wrong, I overall know that there's a reason for everything.
And it's Gary, if I'm sorry, I'm going over this.
Oh, you're good.
It's so ironic that you said this, that you say this. I was talking to a group of youth yesterday, actually, and it was actually a lesson that I was given, and we were talking about calling audibles. So the audible in football is if you call the play and you take a look at the defense and they're making shifts, you make an audible, and you call a different play, and you learn to adapt to the circumstance. And the more that I speak with you, the more that I read about the things that you're doing, you have this innate ability to adapt to your circumstances. And the neat thing that I've seen anyway, and tell me if I'm way off, is it's had an impact on not only those around you, but even more immediately on your family. I looked at your son with the tool belt on, and he was ready to rock and roll. And
Yep.
I know that the stories are all over like that on your TikTok. Thank you for doing this. And so it's a testament of your ability to adapt, to call the audible, and to have that realization of it's not going your way. Well, maybe you need to go a different way. I love how you said that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I actually feel like I'm not the one making the call, though. I'm listening to the call.
Love it. Love it.
Well, and I think for that to actually work, though, you were able to put yourself in a position to want to hear. Let me put it that way, because so many times when tragedy happens, a lot of people will either turn to their faith or they become the victim, and kind of the victim mentality.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was nothing to do with you. That's not. Yeah.
We suffered a big enough tragedy with losing my husband, and I thought there's no way in the world that everyone's going to lose me too.
Sure.
I'm not going to be lost in alcoholism or whatever, any of the other slippery slopes that people use. And I don't want to bash anybody, but I wasn't going to get caught up in any of that. I knew that I had to make a purposeful decision for my life and my future. And so that's what I chose. I'm like, okay, I know that, and I truly believe everything happens for a reason. So I'm like, what is the lesson in all of this? How can I make something positive? And really isn't that the best way to carry on in our loved ones' memories? Nobody wants to hear, oh yeah, she just completely turned into a hermit and it, doesn't go out of her house and we never heard from her again. No, they want to hear how I took that, how I did something with it, and how I'm using that to better the lives of other people, because I know there's somebody listening that is going through this right now.
So I'm guessing that there's probably some, this is kind of a which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. And what I mean by that is I feel like this tragedy brought some traits to your forefront that you probably already kind of had. Take us back a little bit to kind of how you were raised, where you were raised. Just tell us how Jennifer became Jennifer, to where when the situation happened, she stepped up.
Okay, so I am from a very small town called Newton Falls, Ohio. And it's a small town where everybody knows everybody. And I have to credit them, everyone in my hometown for, like, when I mentioned that contest, they all rallied behind me. They all voted. They wanted to see me go. They wanted to see me succeed. But as a child, I was Jenny the mess maker. I've always been creative. So it wasn't, and so to answer your question, Gary, that's kind of like, I always had the creative gene. I did most artistic in my senior class and best dress. So I always, I think, had a way of putting things together and maybe presenting them. Because I feel like possibly my marketing skills, although I'm not, I went to school for fashion marketing, but I don't work in the marketing field, but I feel like maybe that's one of my strong suits. But I've always been creative. And so it wasn't until I started picking up tools and woodworking that the two came together.
That's very cool. How big was your graduating class? I'm just curious. I came from a small town.
Like 100.
All right, we were 87, so we were probably right.
The benefits of small towns.
Have our the zip code is 44444, which I believe we're the only ones in the United States, I think, that have consecutive. And we have a covered bridge that we're well known for that has a covered cross. So that's Newton Falls in a nutshell.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Fantastic. Well, there's another word that comes to me when you were talking about everything that you've been able to accomplish, and that's legacy. And the reason that word came into mind is because it's not just about you, it's about other people, and it's about the family, of course, first, but then really touching the lives of other people. And just wonder, when you hear that word legacy, I mean, how does it hit you?
I take that very seriously, and I feel like I do have a very strong purpose, and I think that's what has kept me going all this time. And I feel that I one of my goals in life, because after I started working with tools and everything, I started looking around and I thought, wait a minute, why in the world when I pick up a tool catalog are there no women in it?
Great point. Great.
Why Instagram pages of the major tool manufacturers, why isn't there a woman? Even hands,
Yep.
you know, all, and nothing against guys. I love, like, guys are my best friends, but why are we ignoring half of the population?
Right.
So I know for a fact that is my purpose, is to change that. And I think someday, even though maybe people are kind of like, we don't know if we want to go into that territory. I think someday they'll be like, okay, she was a trailblazer and we got to thank her.
I think it's absolutely amazing because
I do too.
I'm old enough to remember that when there were posters or advertisements for whether it was Milwaukee or DeWalt, whatever it wasn't the female doing stuff.
Yeah.
It was basically just a model pose shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so exciting for me to see someone like you that is taking it in a completely different direction. And I have to say, it's even more exciting to me to see that the big names like DeWalt are seeing the value in that.
Yes.
Because I know that you're going to be a massive trailblazer for, you know, young women that see your example and what you're doing. And I mean, kudos to you. I just think it's awesome.
Thank you. And I remember those posters too, because I have a dad who is a welder and lives in his shop and builds cars. He has a 32 Ford Roadster. And so he's always in, but I remember going with him to his friends, his buddies, you know, let's go stop in, on Bob's, and we'd go in and there would be those posters hanging there. So as a child growing up, I thought, okay, so that's what women in tools are about. And, and certainly I can recall some other ad campaigns that are not that old. And I'm like, you can tell the women, like they're holding the tool. Have they ever used that? I just, if we're in come on, let's get in 2021. If you're going to be advertising a tool, you should know how to use it.
Yeah.
To be effective and authentic. And certainly women feminine and beautiful too.
Yeah, sure.
I try to show both sides, but carefully. It's a very careful line, I have to tread.
What I appreciate about what you're doing too, though, is it's not just something that it's not something that you're trying to force upon anyone. It's it's through what you're doing that the force in and of itself is more like the, for lack of a better word, the little snowball that starts to pick momentum up. And this is very evident in again, going back to your TikToks and the feedback that you get from everything that you post. It's inspiring. This inspired me to go do this. You're inspiring people to action and not anger. Does that make sense? Hey, there's no women in these things. Instead, you're showing them, hey, this is cool. Look at this tool. And then it's truly that inspiration. And it's just such a different mode of impacting people. And it's very pronounced. The individuals that I've showed your TikTok to that might not have been aware of you, they're so blown away. I mean, you see some of those benefits as well, right? But it really is. You're inspiring because you're taking action to do something, and you're showing individuals that this is really cool, instead of making it all about getting people up in arms, if you will.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that is the message I hope to portray. And I also want to be real about it to make people feel like, okay, she's like me, and that's the underlying message. Okay, she's like me. I feel I'm not intimidated because I kind of call it the Martha Stewart effect, and I love Martha Stewart.
Great.
But she's so polished and so perfect that I often watch things and think I could never do that.
You know who we need to put you in contact with is we actually interviewed Martha Stewart's recipe maker. I think
No, I don't mean to be any, but I often feel like she's just so perfect that it's almost an unattainable goal to do anything. Where I feel like, okay, people probably like, hey, you know what, I found something like that on the curb. I'm going to redo it the way she did it. Um, that's what I want people to think. I can do it because I saw her doing it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think people are actually starting to respond to that. I think people, just kind of what we're seeing is people don't like the polished stuff as much as, and the edited stuff and the overproduced. They want to see the real people. I think that's why some of our success has been, just talking with people and getting their story, as opposed to like, we're going to be controversial or whatever the case may be. Is people want genuine, and you exude genuineness.
Yes. I love it. I couldn't say it better, because when you look at your pictures and such, for instance, you convey elegance and get your hands dirty. It's so fun to see. Here you are in a dress. You look like you're ready to go out to some formal dinner, and then there you are with a power tool, just getting it done. It's so fun to see, and to see that balance, that you can be and do different things instead of fitting into a silo or a bubble or whatever it might be. It really is something that it exudes not only confidence, but inspiration.
Oh, thank you. It's funny because sometimes, like, if people see me in those dress photos, if they look and zoom in real close, they'll see that my legs are banged up and have bruises. And my nails are terrible, like, look. Well, I don't mean to flip you off. My finger, the hammer, probably about a month ago, and it's finally growing out, but it's all black and blue underneath there. So yeah, you're going to get both sides.
Right. Yeah. It's not about perfection. It's about progression, right?
Yeah. Yep. And about doing action, like you said.
Well, one of the things I'm interested in is so you had a tragedy, you had through the powers that be, you had this DeWalt contest that came up. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like that was kind of like something that just landed in your lap, that was a huge pivotal moment in your career and in your life. But the thing that I'm very well aware of is that a lot of people are given opportunities, but they don't do anything with them. What was it about that contest that you then leveraged, and then kind of guide us through that a little bit?
Okay, so it all kind of started with a fluke. I had come home from work one day, and I was still in my dress clothes. I looked nice before I changed into like this attire. And I happened 3 of my thin blue line flags on hand, but they were all the different sizes. I have a small, medium, and large.
Right.
So I recruited my poor son. My poor children get like, hey, take a picture. Hey, come with me and film this. So I said, hey, Cameron, take a picture of me while I look nice with my 3 different sizes, so I could post it on Facebook and put the prices of my work. And so I don't even remember how it came about, but I think my husband's drill must have been around, because I picked up that drill. Maybe I was working on something. I honestly can't remember, but the drill was around and I picked it up. And so for one of the pictures, I kind of posed like Charlie Nichols, just silly and playful. So I posed and I put that on Facebook, and somebody said, you should submit that to DeWalt. So I was like, oh, okay. So I liked their Facebook page, added it where customers could put their pictures. And probably 2 weeks after that, they announced they would show us your tough contest. And something just clicked inside of me that I knew that contest is mine. I saw myself there because it was a 3-day thing. I got to meet their bull riders at a luncheon. Like, I saw myself eating at the luncheon. I visualized myself there. And so I cooked up the strategy in my head. Okay, I'm going to use that picture. I'm going to tell what I do to support heroes and how I use my tools. And I just, like, if they said like the contest is going to start, for instance, 8:00 in the evening. 8 o'clock in the evening, I watched my time and I was on it, like as soon as it was open. And then I just badgered every last soul that I knew to go online and vote for me, because people don't realize when they have those online contests, there's some work that's involved for the people that you're asking to vote for you. They've got to go in, put their email address, confirm something. So really, nobody's going to go through all that unless they're vested and they care about you going. So I had a big lead, and I just decided that I was going to continue on with pushing my numbers from day one, as hard as I did on day one, even though I had a big lead. Part of my strategy was scaring people away, maybe that entered, that became aware of the contest a week from now, and they'd go on and they go, oh, she already has 200 votes. Oh, I'm not even going to try. So part of it was scare away the competition, which I did. And then I also tried as hard on day 30 as I did on day one. I mean, I just kept thanking people, reminding them. They'd come into work and I'm like, hey, did you vote for me? And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, go on and vote. So yeah, that contest was mine from the get-go, and it was part of my destiny.
I love it. You owned it.
Kooky, yeah. I found Kooky said. I also, have you seen Back to the Future?
Of course.
Okay, McFly coming into the diner and he says, Lorraine, you are my density. So I feel like DeWalt they're my destiny. I feel like that moment, like telling them, you're my destiny. Like they haven't figured it out quite yet, but I know it. So yeah, it was one of those moments. I knew it was my destiny.
I love it. And at what point did they start to reciprocate? I know it was a contest, but it was constant work, no doubt about it. But
yeah. So here's another crazy story. So it was shortly after that I decided to name my YouTube channel, Miss DeWalt. And I had changed, I think my Instagram. I went ahead and named it that. And I met their chief marketing officer in Vegas.
Right.
And we followed each other. He was friendly with me. And I just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. You mind if I name my channel? And he never really gave me an answer because he had to talk to his people. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do it. And if they don't like it, I can remove it. So a year after the contest, I had such a good time at the PBR finals in Vegas that when I came home, within 24 hours of coming home from that, because I was able to take my daughter, she was old enough to go. I was like, we have to go back next year. Come hell or high water, we're going. So the day that I came home, I started making plans to go back the next year and take my son too, because I didn't want him to miss out. So I had already purchased the plane tickets, the ticket, and I could only afford one night. So I think we had tickets for Saturday. And so the whole year I had been preparing, and right before it was time to go, my friends that I met contacted me from DeWalt and said, we'd like to invite you back again. And they didn't know I was planning all of this. So they said, we'd like to invite you back. And so I got my contest again. Hi, Ed. Oh, hey, can you hang on 1 second? I'm on a podcast. Oh, thank you.
I got a couple chairs.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So anyway, back. Sorry, my beekeeper friend, I left my hive tool in his.
I love that. That's a stump leader first. I just want you to know that.
Yeah. So I'm trying like crazy to keep up with them. So anyway, unbeknownst to me, they said, hey, we'd like to invite you back. So they reimbursed me.
Wow.
Everything the tickets I bought, the flight, they gave me a nice hotel, and I didn't just get to go Saturday. I got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Wow.
And I found a police officer in Vegas to give my tickets to, and his family. My original that I bought.
Wow.
That's
I was
awesome.
able to somebody else too. So yeah, so I got invited back to that, and then I got invited to the year after that. I got invited to a NASCAR race. I got to meet Eric Jones and see behind, sit above the pit. I'd never been to a NASCAR race before, and my first time was sitting above the pit crew. Like it
Right.
did any on the way there, I was like, oh, maybe we'll have really good seats in the stands. Oh no. When I got to see where I'm like, you mean we get to sit there? So I've had a good relationship with them all along. And I think that at the end of the day, I think they're seeing my value. They know what I bring to the table. Their customers are tagging me in things. I think it's overall a very positive thing. I'm reaching a customer that maybe other people are missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I really appreciate you going a little more in depth on what happened with this contest, because at the beginning, someone could erroneously think that this contest came along and it just changed your life, and you just kind of sat back and enjoyed the ride. You were driving this hard.
Oh yeah. Well,
There was a huge personal component to this life-changing event, and I think that's sometimes what's get lost in these stories.
Yep.
Is you stepped up in a big way.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it was this contest, but you owned that contest, and then what happened after that in just a massive way.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to add to that too. Not only did you create your destiny, it was you included other people along the process. Instead of seeking for a refund, you gave to someone else, and you invited that officer. I mean, if I didn't know anything else about you, that speaks volumes about your character. Is that you're including other individuals, other people, and sharing the ride. It's very. I have probably said this multiple times throughout this podcast, but it is truly inspirational. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I'm gonna back up a little bit too, because I think this is important to point out. You talked about that situation you had at work with that coworker, and I see two sides of a way of living. You have your coworker who doesn't like to see people succeed. So it's like, if I'm going to get better, I need to knock people down.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with your mentality, it's all ships rise. You know what I mean? And the people that I see that are successful and happy, there's a lot of successful people that are very happy, it's those with your mentality that seem to be the happiest and the most successful long term.
Yeah,
because
thank you.
It's awesome.
Thanks. She actually was my boss.
Makes it even that much more fun.
It was my boss that did that. And actually, and her boss, the big boss, our prosecutor, they were best friends. And they both, the story was in the paper because it was me and four of my other coworkers that finally had enough and were brave enough to go file complaints, which few of us won, or some were like, we didn't have enough to decide. But I likened them to the Mean Girls movie. That's truly what it felt like. And everybody that I went to talk to, there was one senior attorney, and I thought she was going to say, I don't believe you, you're crazy. And she started nodding her head. She said, they did it to me too.
Wow.
She said, they did it to me too. But luckily she rose in position to where they needed her because she was running for judge. And suddenly they were nice to her, but she said, they did it to me too. And my advice is to learn to cope, because they're not going to turn against each other. And she said, if you want to work here, you're just going to have to put up with it. They'll go on to somebody else. And I thought, that's terrible advice. Yeah. She was right. She was right. Like, once I started talking, I knew it would be my end. But I was like, I don't want her to go pick on any of my coworkers.
Right.
She said, rather than her bettering herself, she has to feel better by tearing others down. And I thought, at the end of the day, I can't imagine waking up every day and not being excited about what I'm doing and thinking, and not in a braggy way, but thinking I like who I am and I have a lot to share with people. I can't imagine being in that mindset where I have to tear other women down around me. I really, at the end of the day, that's pathetic, and I feel sorry for them.
It's unfortunate because it does happen more often than not. Seeing having been in corporate America for quite some time, it's just one of those things that happens. And one of the things that I've noticed significantly since I left corporate America is that it is definitely those golden handcuffs, but
Mm-hmm.
it's individuals like yourself that realize, hey, I am not living up to my potential. I love what I do, but I don't like the environment. And then it goes back to doing something about it.
Yeah.
And as many people as we've interviewed on this podcast, the one in particular stands out that reminds me of your circumstance, and that was they created their own restaurant, and it became a very successful restaurant. They were bus drivers. They said, "Yeah, I don't like this, man. I don't care if it has great benefits or anything. I know there's other things to do," and I'm very grateful that you took that chance to not only stand up for yourself, but more importantly, to create something for yourself, to create a different path that you believe in.
Yeah. And it was not easy. And the
No.
turning point was I went to talk to the big boss thinking that she really had no idea, and she was kept in the dark on what the middle person was doing to me. And when she told me that she didn't believe me, that was it. I was like, I am a trustworthy, I'm an honest person. And for you to stand here and not even listen to my side, that was it. I got my purse, I got my flag off the wall, and I walked out. I could not stay another minute. And then I got home and I thought, okay, now I have no health benefits. My 401k, I've got to take over that now. Like, it was so scary. And to think now I only have my woodworking income to get me by. And what am I going to do? What did I do? Should I have done that? And I'm like, I cannot stay in a toxic work environment. It would have killed me.
Yep. You're 100% right.
What a blessing it turned out to be, which is
right. And
so
it's taken 3 years. It's taken 3 years of struggling and not going on vacations and not doing extra and driving the same old car that has almost 200,000 miles on it. And, you know, and things breaking and going, how am I going to pay for that? But you know what? I think that it'll all be worth it in the end. And I could not stay there. It would have killed me.
Oh yeah. Yep. And it is. Oh, go ahead, Gary. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just curious. I just imagine there's a, I don't know, 20, 30 something year old female who has kind of, you know, likes to work on cars or rides motorcycles or whatever, that would like to kind of get the word out, start a, you know, a social media presence. What advice would you give that girl? That
Don't
woman?
wait. Do it now. Do it. Just do it.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get in.
Just jump in with both feet and do it.
Yep. Yeah.
Where did you start getting traction on that? What was the turning point for you? Or I'm sure it was a lot of them, but is there one that really stood out?
Yeah, TikTok. I was not looking for another platform. When TikTok came along, it was Gary Vaynerchuk that was insistent on everybody. And so I was like, well, what the heck? Why not? And I realized, hey, this is the platform where maybe all of the other things I was already doing in videos, like bebopping around and turning it more into a production and like dressing in costume. If necessary, like if I felt it was part of like the whole presentation, that was the platform where that was welcomed. Where other places, everyone was like, you're not a real woodworker, you're not a serious woodworker, you're not like the message on some of the other platforms was you're not like us and you don't belong. So on TikTok, it was like, we think she's great. So, but it was there. I had a video that hit 10 million views.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Unreal.
Yeah.
What was the video?
Worked on almost kind of reminds me of me in a way. I draw a lot of parallels and I get a lot of life lessons from projects I do, but it was a couch that I saw abandoned on a curb that nobody wanted. It was trash night. And I gave it a makeover and I presented it to the world and everybody loved it or were confused by it. But either that drove, because I think a lot of people thought I redid it as a couch, but it was made over to go in a greenhouse and hold plants because it had a big shelf in the back. So some people, especially in other countries, were like, well, that doesn't look very comfortable. But so even the confused people help drive engagement.
Yes.
That's awesome.
because I saw a lot of like, like, I don't understand what that is. That looks Greek. And then I'd hit it and it would translate and they're like, what is this? Like everybody's questioning. And I'm like, great, I've confused people all over the world. But a lot of people loved it.
Yeah.
And that couch now has been rented out. I gave it to one of my friends. Their daughter got married and they used it as a prop, like out in a field somewhere, and the whole wedding parties around it. So I'm like, okay, so that continues to be shown. And, that thing was old and forgotten about and was ready for the curb. And just when like all hope was lost, boom.
That's so cool.
That also epitomizes what you stand for, though, Jennifer, is that these things that are discarded, you make them fresh, you make them new, and there's a whole new other life. It just over and over and over again, I see that message. You take something that everyone might disregard, you take a circumstance that absolutely sucks, and you make it better. And that's what's been so inspiring. I've only known you for 2 weeks, for heck's sake. And you've inspired me beyond what I would have thought was possible, because you have that ability to do that.
Thank you. Well, I'm working with a writer right now, and we're writing my book. And so I believe it's going to be a repurposed life.
Like it.
Be the title. So I hope to share that story with. Ultimately, it would be great if millions, because I could see that book being turned into I can see the movie already in my head.
It's going to happen, man. It's going to happen.
The book has to come first. But I already see scenes in my head, just like I saw myself at the Bull Riders Luncheon and saw myself there. I see myself in a movie. I don't know who would play me. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to remember for, like to be carting my tripod and like in every shot, I've got to be carrying something and carting something around or picking something up off the curb or whatever. So there's a lot of details. I'm like, okay, I'm making mental notes. Okay, that I'm going to have to remember to include that, or that situation, or jumping behind cars because I'm filming, my neighbors are driving by and I'm dressed like Tina Turner, or the craziness, and having one of my neighbors go, oh, she's nutty. What is she doing today? Or just, under their breath, because that happens all the time. So yeah, that's something that I can see in the future.
I think.
How do people find you on social media, Jennifer?
Okay, if they just Google Miss DeWalt, you'll get a whole bunch of stuff, but either under Jennifer Cline or Miss DeWalt. Just use Google.
Yeah,
perfect.
You'll whole bunch of stuff.
I have a feeling you're going to be all over the place too, now that you've been multiplied all over the place across different platforms, and you already have. But I know that your time is precious, but there's a lot of things that mean a lot to me. But one of the things that you talked about, the thin blue line, and I'm just wondering, how did you get involved with all of that stuff? Looking at everything that's going on, that it still means a lot to me. It might be divisive, but hey, so be it. I think it's an inspiration what you're doing in that work. I just wondering if you can tell us about that.
Well, it was really with working with the grand jury, and almost all of the people coming in to testify as witnesses were the responding officers. And with working with them, they became family to me. So not only do I make flags, but I write things inside of them. And I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but there's scripture, words of inspiration, words of gratitude, all written inside. And then I include Matthew 5:9 on the back, which is the blessed or the peacemakers scripture. But it was really working with them and getting behind the scene, knowing their family. A lot of them would come in to court on technically it was their day off. And here they are, they're bringing their kids. I'm holding their babies while they're going in. And so I really grew, my respect for them grew even larger, because I've always admired police officers and EMTs, firefighters, military. So it was building the flags for the people that it was my way of giving back. to people that I know to be heroes, that they're the best people I know. Sure, in any profession, there's going to be one or two bad apples. You're going to have that. But that doesn't define them as a whole, because if people knew them the way I know them, they would see that they are truly the best people I've ever met in my life.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jennifer, it's one of those mic drop situations right here. And, you know, you might be Miss DeWalt, but you're Miss Inspiration, you're Miss Motivation, and basically you're the epitome of what it would be to focus and pursue. My words are getting lost because there's so many things that your story conveys, and I can't thank you enough for your time and sharing that with us.
Thank you for a place to share it, because I feel that is part of my purpose. And it was wonderful speaking to both of you. And I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Okay, I need to make a quick tribute here real quick. So this right here, this right here is a Sawzall, and I've got drills and all sorts of DeWalt tools, but this one fell out of the back of a truck back in 2000, probably 9. I threw a little bit of Gorilla Tape on that thing.
Yep.
You know how old this thing is. I mean, it's 18 volt. My friends are always like, Gary, you use those things all the time. When are you going to upgrade? Come on. I'm like, it works. It still works.
It works.
Yeah.
And I have a couple things like that too. You know, that the original drill that I picked up, I think it's out in my pole barn. The original drill that I picked up that was my husband's still works as well.
Yeah. So I'm naming this tool Jennifer in honor of. It's taken a beating. It's gone through some hard times, but it's better than ever.
Oh, thank you. That's just a testament to how durable their things are.
They really are.
Yeah, I would have my old Gary's drill on my or on my workbench or in pictures, and people would be like, "Why do you have that old?" And I'm like, "You don't understand. A, it still works, and B, it's special to me. And when I use that drill, I'm including him in a way in everything that I do."
That's so awesome.
It is fabulous. Well, Gary is naming it Jennifer, and I think it's awesome that it is also durable. That is definitely you.
Thank you. That's an honor.
It's a done.
Well, when you have your book out and when you have other projects, let's talk again. All right.
Okay. I can't wait. We should do this like in 6 months or a year, so I can tell you what happened since.
Love it, Jen. Love it.
I'd be happy to.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for your time and your inspiration. You
Thank
are
you.
a rock star.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah.